Hi, I'm Sean Moynihan, Executive Managing Editor of National Underwriter Property and Casualty. In this edition of our Risks in Focus series, we look at funeral homes. What are some of the top-of-mind risk management concerns of the business, the most common potential issues for which funeral homes have to be insured?
Well, there are several. One is the property insurance, the liability, slip and falls, the professional liability for in case somebody feels that they didn't do something correctly, workers' compensation, which very rarely gets talked about because you have an employee who lifts a body and hurts their back. They got to make sure they're covered properly.
Of course, an accident with the hearse, you know, if someone plows into me, sometimes I'm a magnet for these other vehicles at times. I have the proper insurance. I could get the historic insurance, which would be much lower. I don't put that much mileage on her, so yes, I could do it, but I feel let's go with the straight arrow and do the right thing. God forbid there is an accident, I want to be covered fully.
What coverage does a funeral home have to maintain against, say, a family that it's unhappy with the preparation of the deceased?
The professional liability is, the limit is a decision that each individual home has to make. It could be $1 million, it could be $500,000, it could be a $2 million limit, but it's all based prior to something happening. So you have to decide when you take out a policy what you want to be covered for. Usually it's $1 million. It's added to what they call the general liability of the package policy, which would be property liability, and it's very inexpensive.
And there's no special kind of coverage really that's required for the specific needs that funeral directors have, are there? Like, for instance, storage issues of the body and dealing with chemicals? The
issues of storage and use of chemicals is not something that is individualized outside of the coverage. If something happens, it's either going to be the general liability or the professional liability, so it's automatically going to be part of the coverage that you secure for a client.
What are some of the more unusual claims that you have heard about coming from the funeral home industry?
Well, I've witnessed where I was at a funeral and employees of the funeral home were taking the body, the casket out of the hearse, and literally it was a person of good size, and they dropped and it opened up. And the family and people, friends and relatives all were astonished. And that could be a claim for mental anguish.
I have heard that human remains have not been embalmed properly, and there's a problem with during visitation that has been an embarrassment to the family, and if there's a lawsuit involving there. I've heard that caskets at times they break and things happen as in falling deceased from the casket, the unit itself. That's a big problem. Of course, the casket companies have their liability insurance, but you can't blame a family for wanting to seek compensation. It's a traumatic experience.
And do bodies ever need to get exhumed because of mistakes made by funeral homes? Is that something?
It happens sometimes, yes. And you better hope that everything was done right.
You mentioned that you'd taken a look at your coverage several years ago, I believe it was in 2001, and you realized you were paying too much. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I had inherited the company, as most of us do, when I purchased the firm, and I was paying thousands of dollars. He came in, I explained my needs, he was very amenable to what I wanted, and he produced.
Can you give us a range of premiums? What's a standard premium cost, and maybe what are some of the higher end premiums?
I mean, it can run from, depending on whether there's a building or it's just a tenant in a building, could run from $1,500, $1,700 to $10,000, $12,000.
Any advice you'd give to other funeral directors regarding what they should look for in their policies and finding the right agent?
Actually, they should look for the proper coverage to make sure that their building is insured for replacement value, very important. Professional liability, they should have the proper coverage depending upon how many cases they do per year, and only those directors would know what is the proper coverage for that. And price. Don't look to get ripped off. Don't think because you inherited it or mom and dad had it that it's right for you. You can shop it around for the same coverage and save yourself some dollars. Over the years, it does add up. Best thing I ever did.